I'm delighted to welcome Michael Hart to Revealing the Truth, and to our studio audience, and to our family, of course, of featured guests. You've now been a featured guest now for months, and regular appearance here on the third Monday of every month. You know, what's interesting is we promote ourselves as the headlines, the heart lines, and the biblical truth. And you are very much headlines and biblical truth, and you do some sappy stories every now and then. So you're actually a heartline kind of guy.
Right.
And you fit into that heartline being Michael Hart. There is so much going on. Anti-Semitism is at the forefront always of my vocabulary. Waleed Shobat put out a post this weekend that I forwarded out that gave clarity that in 1973 he went to bed as a Jordanian and he woke up as a Palestinian. And that kind of gave great clarity to the audience as to how this Palestinian nonsense got started. You've got now this congresswoman who is a female Louis Farrakhan, elected in this country and advancing and rising to media stardom, and organizing things that are anti-American, unconstitutional, and really, how do you describe it?
Well, you know, Rabbi, a lot of people don't realize that it was probably about 10 or 12 years ago in Dearborn, Michigan, which is not where she's from, where there were certain groups that were encouraging Muslim families to relocate to that area. There were some reports that they would receive $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for doing so, tax credits, etc. And the idea was to elect Muslims locally to, you know, the state house, which is where she started, as well as to local government, sheriff's offices, city councils, etc. That began to kind of morph into some other states, and of course, you know, she is from Minneapolis. And then a report came out a couple of days ago from the FBI expressing concerns that her district happens to be the single biggest district for the recruitment of Somalis in particular to fight for Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and supposedly, you know, under the pretense that the American government and their counterterrorism programs were antithetical to the Somali community. So it is interesting that you have this woman who is Somali, she's Muslim, and she's very anti-Semitic, now gets elected in this predominantly Somali Muslim community. And now we're learning that there have been reports of anywhere from 25 to 35 people within her district that have either gone to fight for ISIS or attempted to fight for ISIS. While she's a representative in her own state house, I believe it was 6 Somali nationals who were caught at the U.S.-Mexico border trying to defect to Mexico for the purposes of fighting with the Muslims. She came to their defense very publicly and in a letter to the local authorities to, if not exonerate them of their crimes, to be more compassionate, and has advanced this idea of compassion is the way to approach Islamic extremism. I find that extremely troubling, on top of the fact that, you know the relationship between Israel and the Muslim nations, and now we have it right here in the United States House of Representatives.
There's been thought for a long time that the West was going to be jihad through immigration and migration, and that there were going to be, through the deep state and through the entrenchment of CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, that it wasn't going to be as overt as what we saw in the San Bernardino shooting, that they were going to tone it down and they were going to bring in to the United States a core of new Muslim, young, viral producing families, 6 kids each, to advance the percentage, and she is the leading edge. She is exactly the poster child for the advancement of that agenda. And we see a Cory Booker, we see CARE in Texas coming out and saying, look, Sharia is the highest form of law. Under the Obama administration, there was legislation which stated that for a Muslim, that they didn't have to, in their citizenship, swear allegiance to the United States of America and the Constitution, because they had already committed to a higher law, which was Sharia, and this would be like me signing a document that said that I deny my belief in Jesus to get citizenship in Israel, and I do it as just a matter of paperwork. I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to do what Peter did, which was deny the Messiah, although I would be greatly honored to be a Peter. That's what I would have to do in order to get citizenship in Israel. So you have this advancing agenda, and you would think it would be polarizing, but it's not. It's unifying. It's unifying a progressive left that has just so lost the message that they are looking for any message that they can rally around, where somebody is a new Barack Obama, is a new spokesperson that anything you have to say about her is either going to be racist, Islamophobic, just every one of those labels, and she advances that cause, and she's a non-credible representative of this United States, and this green initiative is a joke.
Well, you know, it truly is. And although it fell out of favor some years ago, there was the religious move towards what was known as Chrislam, or the blending of Christianity and Islam in a church setting. And there was even people out there such as Rick Warren that offered some sense of credibility to it until he really figured out what was going on. We're seeing something very similar to that in this nation today, politically speaking, where you're having this blending of American ideologies with some form of Sharia. Now, I'm not saying that that's their agenda. That's what they're trying to imply to the rest of America, that there is this common ground, if you will, between these two ideologies. When in actuality, you are seeing exactly what you're referring to, this introduction of Muslim ideologies, by extension Sharia, into American culture for the purposes of them not assimilating into the American ideology or the Christian viewpoint, but quite the opposite. And so many people that are under or uneducated about the progressive movement, because this is not progressive. This is transcended into something entirely different. It's almost militant. And so, you know, you're seeing this trend in this country of the Shariaization of America, led by people just like this woman who has been very overt in her comments. And I don't think that people realize the extent to where she has gone with this, and how it's a direct affront to Israel. It's a direct affront to everything in terms of American-Israeli relationships. And the reality of it is, Rabbi, is that it's taking hold and it's become popular. You know, back in the day, in this community in particular, the recruitment of these ISIS soldiers was a word-of-mouth process. It was family, and it was people that were talking amongst themselves for the purposes of bringing people in to support the idea. Now you have websites out there that are creating these videos and the instruction guides that are being consumed by these Somali citizens, as though the United States has these counterterrorism programs that are going in, drone strikes and whatnot, in Somalia. So we have these young, uninformed, semi-progressive Somali Sharia adherents that are consuming information in their community that the country in which they live is killing their family members back home, in part harvested by the ideas of Ilhan Omar and other people just like that. That's remarkably dangerous.
You know, when we take a look at this situation, we are seeing something that is abhorrent to everything that's American, but yet is a testimony to America. It's very much like a testimony to Israel that in the Knesset they seat Arab Muslim representatives, and that they have this dissenting voice there within. That's truly the republic. That's truly the democratic system that says that First Amendment, you have the right to free speech. The problem is that the alignment with the Farrakhan's, the alignment with the haters, with the anti-Semitic rhetoric, and launching a position where the party is allowing this voice to go out. They have no voice. I mean, who's their voice? Elizabeth Warren, discredited. This is all so much distraction, but the problem is they're not really advancing an ideology that's going to sit with democracy. They're saying, we want our own set of laws, we want our own no-go zones, we want our own Sharia courts. This is happening in London, this is happening all throughout Germany, that they're having Sharia courts, they have no-go zones, they have their own police, and they have their own segregated community. Where in Birmingham, Alabama, you could have a place where you and I didn't go, that if we went there, we would be arrested. It's kind of like what they did when we gave reparations to the Native American Indians. We gave them reservations. They had their own police, and you didn't go onto the reservation or to the Indian community. If you committed a crime there, you were under their authority and under their jurisdiction, even though you were still a member of the state. The problem I have is when the Pope kisses an imam in front of billions of people and embraces Islam and puts his seal of approval on it and says that we are the same, we are alike, and we serve the same God. This is the leading voice of the largest denomination of Christianity in the world. And it is perpetuating a deception that those that follow the Pope, okay, and you grew up Catholic.
I did.
There are homes, there are many people that if the Pope speaks, he's the E.F. Hutton of all, he's more powerful than the Billy Graham voice was. He is the Pope. And so that means that every South American, and we have to get out of this Western North America thinking, even this Western United States thinking, because Mexico, highly Catholic, Central America, highly Catholic, South America, fully entrenched in Catholicism, and they had the greatest missionary program in the world for the longest time, of course, before the Reformation, and then even after the Reformation, till they could catch up. All there were Catholic missionaries, and so therefore every one of these communities was Catholic, and they were taught to revere the word of the Pope. So here you have a picture plastered on national media of the Pope kissing on the lips an imam and embracing Islam as the same God and equal to, and we're one family. And this is now watering down this to where people are now being deceived. And you and I are now bearing the name as Islamophile. I'm not afraid of it. I know what it is. Right. I've read the Quran. I know what it says. I know what it says about my people being turned into apes and termites, and that this was the command of Muhammad, that some of us, not all of us, but some of us we were so low that we would be transformed into apes and termites. Okay? This is anti-Israel, anti-Jewish sentiment, okay, that is now grabbing a hold in America, because you cannot be pro-Islam and pro-Israel at the same time.
No, you cannot. And it is very disturbing. And as you point out, I was raised Catholic. And in the American Catholic view, we do not put as much weight behind what the Pope has to say. And in disclosure, not only was I raised Catholic, but I was also baptized a Baptist. I went through a Protestant phase, and eventually I just came to the point where I wasn't as concerned with the denominational or the trappings of denominational teachings as I was just my relationship with the Lord. But with that said, as you point out, particularly in the Hispanic communities, you do have people under which the edicts of the Pope are to be taken with a much higher regard than they are in the traditional American Catholic Church. But there's this factionalization which is taking place, and it's funny if you look at the Middle East and you look at the Sunnis and the Shia, and then you have the Kurds over here. We're seeing something like that replicate itself right here in America, where we're becoming quite tribal in our approach. And you've got the new lighter, watered down version of Catholicism that is trying its best to coexist peaceably with Islam, despite the fact of the relationship with the United States and Israel, And at the end of the day, the great unwashed, not to be disrespectful about it, simply do not see what is going on right before their very eyes. So you have this emergence, whether it's the Pope and Omar and Cory Booker or whoever, you're seeing this emergence of leadership in this country that is extraordinarily troubling to me. And the vast majority of people, because you got to bear in mind, Omar was democratically, legally elected to represent a vast majority of Muslims in that sense. And are they seeking some type of an enclave? Absolutely. But once it's successful here, and it's already successful in Dearborn, they can simply move it around, move it around, move it around, till eventually there is going to be a constitutional or worse battle between the tenets of Christianity and that of the Muslim belief.
One positive thing to come out of this is that there is a congressman that is representing their constituents as it was designed by the Constitution, that they are to be the voice of the people they represent. Mm-hmm. Now, what we're seeing in the Congress today is a very politically divided based on party line and not based on the representation of the people. So if there's anything positive I can say about her is she actually does represent her constituency, and she's carrying the message forward of her constituency.
Oh, you're absolutely correct.
And in that regard, she puts many congressmen to shame. She puts Chuck Schumer to shame. She puts Nancy Pelosi to shame, who are not advancing the cause of the voices of their people. Doug Jones, okay, another example. He is not representing the voice of Alabama. Okay? So here we have somebody who's a senator that is taking a party line position, and he's not representing his constituency. Whereas, although we disagree with her constituency, we disagree with her position, she is a valid voice and doing the job she was elected to do based on the Constitution and what the constitutional responsibilities are of a representative of a body of people. So in that regard, if we can glean anything positive from it, at least she's doing the job she was hired to do. We may not like the people that hired her to do it. We may not like the agenda of the people that hired her to do it, but nevertheless, she is adequately and effectively representing her constituency. So in the positive sense, not that she's a role model of any kind, but it's a wake-up call to others that, listen, there are agendas that need to be advanced based on your constituency. I just read that 88% of Congress says they are Christians. This just came up in my news feed. 88% of Christians. How is that possible that a Bible-believing Christian can support full-term abortion? That a Bible-believing Christian can support same-sex marriage? Now, I understand they've moved it down to the state level, but you are a state representative, okay? You represent your state, okay, and you're an influencer. Listen, to believe that Gary Palmer doesn't ever address Montgomery, okay, is foolishness. Okay? That he doesn't ever have a meeting with Jim Carnes, or he doesn't ever have a meeting with any of other local state representatives, and that there's no influence, there's no address, there has to be somewhere along the way where the voice of the people is being represented to the state voice is being represented to the Washington voice, and so there's a line of communication there. Doug Jones is apparently not aware of that in this state as he continues to go down the path of supporting the same political divide. In history, because this is really your expertise, have we seen a divide like this where we've seen divides, but there's been divides because there are two very specific, clear criteria and agendas. This one wants this, these are the 5 points that they want, these are the 5 points that they want, okay? Here we have the 5 points on the Republican platform, which are clearly articulated. That's what we elected Donald Trump to do. National security, a border wall, relations with Israel. There's various points he ran on. Then we have this Democratic agenda that is undefined, okay? And you have, I don't know how many people have announced their candidacy for it. None of them have a message which resonates with anybody. Have we ever had a point in history where it was one party was so confused and so scattered and just so completely set against everything that the other party had to say.
Not to the degree that we have now. Back in the day, and I mean near the Industrial Revolution, you had a lot of different lines of thought, schools of thought, but they were subordinated to the overall two-party ideology. But you have several things that are going on here that I think people need to realize. Within Islam, the Muslims know what they believe. They know who they are, they know what their agenda is, and they are extraordinarily patient, politically and culturally speaking. And it's very interesting to note that if you've read the Quran, and I have as well, that the belief within Islam is that Muhammad was a contemporary of Christ. Now, they don't believe that Christ was divine, but the majority of Muslims do believe in the existence of Christ. There's a big difference between believing in Christ and following Christ. And a lot of people, if they say, well, I'm a Christian, I'm in Congress, I'm one of the 88% or whatever the number is, I believe these are people that believe in the existence of Jesus Christ as a person, but following the tenets of his teachings and having a personal relationship with him are vastly different. Those that believe in Christ but don't follow Christ are very malleable. And so you have this political ideology that, hey, we can all get along because, what would Jesus have done? Well, we as Christians or Messianic Jews, we know what Christ would have done. But the majority of them simply do not. They are Christians, maybe if we're lucky on Sunday, certainly on December 24th when the tree is going up, but the rest of the time they're not putting it into practice, because one thing about Sharia and the Muslims, again, they know what they're doing. That's so funny to me because they are so much more conservative than what we would consider to be our conservative movement here in this country. And so they do conservatism better than we do as well, although we find their beliefs and their behavior is very abhorrent. But if you realize that you have this whole body of people that are uncommitted to what they believe vis-a-vis the Christian Democrats, then that is very fertile ground to be replaced with something that stands for something, however antithetical we might think it to be.
The scariest part about Islam to me, one Quran. Pray 5 times a day. Observant Muslims around the world stop what they're doing and pray 5 times a day. They universally reject pork. They have the same dietary laws all across the board. 38,000 denominations of Christianity, every translation of the Bible you could possibly want. There's no singular set of dynamics or of belief systems other than if you believe in your heart and profess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, you'll be saved. That's it. That's the whole package. That's all there is. Whether you observe, don't observe, doesn't really matter to the general population. But in the Muslim community, they are organized. They are unified. They're unified and they are singular, right? Which means that their growth in the last, how many centuries? 14?
Oh, yeah, 1648.
1648, okay?
Or 648, I'm part.
648. So from 648 till now, okay, 650 years after Christ, they've grown to the point where they're about 1.5 billion strong, where in 2,000 years we're about 2.5 billion strong. Take out half of that for Catholic and you're at 1.25. Take about another 25% for those that are Christian in name only, then we're vastly outnumbered by a unified group of people that share a common faith.
Right.
And that is disconcerting, and the fact that they now have, and we've talked about this, you and I talked about this years ago on the radio, that you're going to start seeing the voice in local government. This is the jihad by immigration and by migration, that the tipping points, there's 2%, 4%, 6%, 8%. At 2%, they're congenial and everybody gets along, they're wonderful neighbors. Okay? At 4%, they begin to vie for representation in government and begin to imply that they want a separate form of government. At 6%, they begin to legislate government. At 8%, they now have implemented Sharia and no-go zones, and those are the tipping points. We've watched it, we've chronicled it in sub-Saharan Africa, we've chronicled it in the Middle East, and we've chronicled it in Europe, and now we're watching it happen here. And we know it's happening, and we know when it happens, and we as a country are not doing anything about it because of the fear of the left and the condemnation. And now that we have a Democratic House, okay, there's going to be no legislation passed whatsoever. So even the immigration naturalization laws that are in force on the record are not being allowed to be implemented without a great outcry and a call for their repeal. So we've been warned. I mean, this is a country that's been warned over and over again by every conservative voice there is, from Waleed Shobat to every prophetic voice, every conservative news voice out there, that this day is coming. We're talking with Michael Hart, as we do during the Michael Hart Hour right here on Revealing the Truth on the third Monday of every month at the 10 o'clock hour. You can find Michael at michaelhartradio.com.
Michael Hart Show.
michaelhartshow.com. He's the author of Unknown America, Myths and Little Known Oddities About the Greatest Nation on Earth, a fascinating read about things you never knew about your own country that will make you have more points to talk about, some fascinating tidbits, and always adding to this, and always a delightful guest. We're going to take a short break, and after that break, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the new Attorney General, whether or not we think that there's going to be finally a Hillary Clinton investigation, what's going to happen with this Mueller debacle, where the Senate Intelligence Committee has said that there is no evidence whatsoever to support Russian collusion. This is the Senate, after 2 years of the same time period of the Mueller investigation, coming to a formal conclusion. What does that mean for America? We'll be right back. Not everything that makes the headlines has biblical importance, but many events that happen around the world do, and you never hear about them. Igniting a Nation is pleased to teach Revealing Prophecy every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at the Marriott 280 in Birmingham. We will cover worldwide events and insider information that will connect the dots of what's happening around the world with biblical prophecy. If you happen to miss a class, we'll televise each week's class at 10 o'clock Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our social media outlets. Copies of the teachings will also be available to purchase on our website at www.ignitinganation.com. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Michael Hart, host of the MichaelHartShow.com and author of Unknown America, Myths and Little Known Oddities About the Greatest Nation on Earth. Michael, welcome back to the program. So we have a new Attorney General. Between you and I cannot express my incredible disappointment in the 2-year term of our great Senator Jeff Sessions, who was a great senator for this state and went to Washington and seemed to have turned into somebody, it was like a doppelganger. It was like somebody that nobody ever met before in their life who did nothing. I thought he was going to go there and advance this campaign agenda, bring Hillary Clinton to her knees, expose the Clinton Foundation, do all those things that he heard on the campaign trail. He opened up for Donald Trump here in Alabama. He was by his side the whole time, and we fully expected that, and he did nothing, absolutely nothing in that regards. How did that happen?
Well, you know, it's interesting that you bring up his endorsement of Trump in the early days. I was actually in Mobile, Alabama, when Trump made his appearance and Sessions was with him. I think the endorsement at that point in time was a little on the tacit side. I believe that Sessions was not fully committed at that point in time, but eventually he did come on board, as you point out. We thought, because of our relationship, and I've spoken to the man, interviewed him several times, that he was going to be a real, perhaps Trey Gowdy-inspired bulldog, and he turned out to be quite feckless. And I don't know if that was a matter of Southern hospitality entering into it, or if he was in over his head, or if he was, you know, privately a never Trumper, or was just simply not on board. But if Barack Obama was correct with Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch in the belief that the Attorney General is, for all intent and purposes, the White House's bodyguard, Sessions did not get that message. Now, I don't believe that's the role of the Attorney General, but Obama certainly did, and we heard that from Holder himself. But Sessions seemed to be, again, quite feckless, very weak in the knees, not willing to take on the political challenges, not willing to spend any political capital. And I'm not sure if he wasn't even just viewing his eventual retirement, because he turned out to be not only not a great Attorney General, but perhaps one of the worst this country's ever seen.
So now we have somebody coming in that I would consider to be much more hawkish than this dove that we just took out of office. And we've got the Senate Intelligence Committee report that, based on their investigation, their interviews, their review of the documentation, that there is not even a single shred of evidence, one piece of evidence to implicate any Russian collusion with the Trump administration and the Trump campaign. So what does this new AG do in regards to the Mueller investigation? What does he do in regards to bringing back and revitalizing a full-blown investigation into the servers, private emails, all the corruption that was going on with the Clinton Foundation and the entire Clinton regime, and the complicity of the Obama administration and the deep state? Are we actually going to see in these next 2 years a draining of the swamp that does not require legislation? It does not require Congress to act in a bipartisan manner. It doesn't require any of that. This is a judicial kind of effort under the Department of Justice that doesn't require any of this bipartisan support?
Barr has telegraphed that he would be willing to fire Mueller. Now, Mueller is definitely barking up the wrong tree. There's no doubt about that. My issue is we're in a weird place with this president, Rabbi, because he seems to, number one, not care what people think. He loves a good barroom fight. I don't know, however, if they're going to weigh that against the political fallout, because, you know, I'm an advocate of the belief that almost every story going on in the country today has tentacles attached to other stories. And with the emergency declaration to get the wall built, the president spent an awful lot of political capital, and he knows that. Are we going to fire Barr? I'm going to say that's about 70-75%. Are we going to go after Hillary Clinton and Bill and the Clinton Foundation? I'm less confident about that. And the reason is I don't know if the White House was to weigh the ultimate outcome, if they think the American population, the general voter, even cares about them anymore. That they are, yesterday's news, there has been, it almost doesn't matter what they've done at this point, to paraphrase Hillary, what difference does it make at this point anyway? So I think Trump has to look at it and say, I've spent this amount of political capital, the declaration of this emergency. Am I willing to spend what I have left in the political capital bank on going after Hillary Clinton when the general American does not seem to care that much about it? Yeah, for those of us that are, immersed in the media, immersed in conservatism, are concerned about the prophecies, concerned about the gospel and the direction of the country, we want the deep state to be taken down. I don't know if that it can be done by one man or in one administration or even one generation for that matter. I think Trump is more a matter of a voice for the future to dismantle this over time. I had somebody tell me years ago when I was going to go on a diet, it took you longer than 6 weeks to gain that 20 pounds, so it's going to take long to get it off. And I think we're kind of in a deep state environment. Will Barr go after Mueller? If he doesn't get rid of him, I think he'll certainly attack him verbally. Does he go after Clinton outside of some topical? I don't think he will, because I don't think he'd be successful, because I don't think the support is there.
All right, what do you think about 2020? The rumor is that people believe that Trump can be unseated in 2020.
Not by this field. I mean, we've got Elizabeth Warren being outed for, her Native American heritage. Cory Booker now wants to, and I'm not kidding, wants to do away with hamburgers and hot dogs and cheese and bacon. He came out, when a presidential candidate comes out and has to say, I'm not going to make y'all become vegan, I mean, that's absolutely stunning to me. Kamala Harris is bragging, and she was wrong about it because Snoop Dogg wasn't singing at that point in time. But when you have a presidential candidate that comes out on a platform of, yeah, I used to get stoned, so vote for me. Now, I realize you've got Sharia and the Muslims and the conservative ideology there, and they're very devout in their thoughts. The younger voters in this country today are not nearly as organized in terms of their cogent thoughts. And frankly, in this case, the Muslims might even to a degree come to our rescue, because they are in stark opposition to one another. You don't have a candidate out there. Biden, I don't think, is going to go anywhere. And, Klobuchar, her entire staff hates her. You've got this one guy, the Yang fellow, who wants to give a basic income to everybody. That's already been disproven to be non-workable. I don't think they have anybody, with the exception possibly of Howard Schultz, the former Starbucks CEO, that if somehow he can morph his way into the Democrat nomination as opposed to the independent, he could in fact be a threat. Bernie Sanders has already blown himself out of the water. Right now, the only opposition to Trump is going to be Schultz. The rest of them it's like a high school election for your SGA president. It is comical, it is low intellect, and hopefully enough people have seen through that on the low millennial voter scale to not want to elect these people. You've even got Michael Moore that wants to change the Constitution so Alexandria Cortez can run.
Hillary Clinton, can she run?
No. She can try. She's not going anywhere. She's not going to get the support. One thing, the Democrat Party has left the Clintons behind. They are also working furiously to leave the Nancy Pelosi's behind. And then when you have people like Maxine Waters that is hitching her wagon to an Alexandria Cortez, which she has, and the Sheila Jackson Lees of the world and the Al Greens of the world feigning that direction, then you have the Cory Bookers of the world, in addition to the hamburgers, supporting the Green New Deal. Even the New York Times has come out against lately. I think that, you know, there's so much of a trend towards the left. I kind of liken it, you know, I'm kind of an organized crime buff. And back in the day, you have what was called the Mustache Pete's. And this is in New York, Masseria and Marzano and all these old Sicilian dons that were wiped out by the Lucky Lucianos of the world. Pelosi, Schumer, they're the Mustache Pete's of the new Democrat Party. They want them out of the way. And Alexandria is Luciano reincarnated, politically speaking. I don't think Clinton goes anywhere. I don't think she stands a chance. And I think the remnants of the Mustache Pete's in the Democrat Party are terrified of her sticking her nose in it or even throwing her hat in the ring.
The cloud of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi today, their defiant position against all things Republican, all things conservative, all things Trump. What message is that sending to the rest of this world?
One thing about America in our history is no matter our disagreements, we always flowed together, even in our opposition. If you go back to the colonial days in this country, there was no doubt that the early parties, although they differed on how to get there, they still all were going basically the same general direction as they created their identity in the post-King George world. The Democrat Party today is so factionalized, they don't know who they are, they don't know what they believe, they don't know what's going on. We have created this environment right now where you have the Republicans over here that in a lot of senses are very feckless in their beliefs, but then you have this elementary school mindset over here, again, of the Ocasios of the world and the Pelosi's of the world, and how antiquated the viewpoints of the Schumers and Pelosi's of the world are. You pointed out, we were talking, you know, moments ago about Catholicism, and you can't be pro-abortion, pro-choice, and Catholic at the same time. They don't even know what their relationship with the Lord is, let alone their constituents or their own beliefs. They're going with the popular wind. That's how you get a bartender who was, you know, slinging Manhattan 6 months ago, upending a seated representative from one of the largest states in this country to become the voice of a new generation and the party. I personally think that they're going to completely implode in the next couple of years. Am I concerned about them? Yes, because where that implosion leads to, where the flack of that all ends up, is very concerning to me. But we're just going to have to wait and see how that plays out.
Do you see the next 2 years playing out the way the last 2 years have, where Donald Trump is a wild card, just a wild card?
Yes. Yes. Trump, and I know people in the Trump administration, and this is going to seem like an odd thing to say, but people that know Trump and literally are with him daily tell me that he is having way too much fun, that he is enjoying the battle royales. He is in his comfort zone. My family is from New York. My mother, my grandmother, etc. You know, my grandmother came over here. They're old country. They all came over from Czechoslovakia and Poland. But this northern New York mindset is, I think it's very offensive to much of the country, but he's being true to himself. If there's anybody out there that's being true to themselves, it's funny that the people that are the most consistent are the Omars of the world, the Ocasio-Cortezes of the world, and the Trumps of the world. And so we're playing out on that particular stage. Is he going to stay the course? Absolutely. I've seen the man speak in public many times. He is very susceptible to going with the mood of the moment, particularly when he speaks in public. So I think you're going to see him continue down that pathway. And I think he's going to be very difficult to unseat in 2020. But I think not only are we going to continue to see Trump as Trump, I think he gets even more Trump-esque.
Well, you and I have a prior history with Yellowhammer, with Cliff Sims. Mm-hmm. Okay, Cliff now has an expose out that he's doing the media circuit on, where he exposes a lot of what the inner workings are within the White House. And it portrays kind of a comical picture of a president that spends more time doing other things than being president. And doesn't paint the president in a very favorable light. You know, corporate executives are often despised by their employees, but drive the most successful companies. You know, look at Starbucks. You know, Starbucks is a very, very successful company. Now you have Howard Schultz out there that says, I would run, but I would divide the party because I wouldn't run as a Democrat if I had to be aligned with these people. So, you know, the president as a caricature, the president as a personality, he is still the art of the deal. He is still the whatever that TV show was that he fired everybody.
The Apprentice.
The Apprentice. Still operating in that same mode, but that shouldn't surprise us because he operated that mode during the campaign. So it's almost like somebody who dated somebody for a year, they acted out during that entire year and expected that when they got married they were going to settle down, okay, and that they were going to change. So that's an unrealistic expectation. Unfortunately, because of his personality style, his accomplishments, which are extraordinary, are being discounted or not even paid any attention to. And he's probably accomplished more in the first 2 years of this presidency than any president in the history of the United States, which would put him as one of the greatest presidents when it comes to the economy, when it comes to State Department issues and international relationships, treaties, the economy. All those things are incredibly favorable, but all get overshadowed by the rhetoric. Do you see any of that coming into play over the next 2 years in anything that's going to be beneficial legislation? I mean, the spending bill, okay, that takes us to the end of the year. Okay, that's better than a continuing resolution, but is that still good enough? He's very focused on the wall. It was a campaign promise, focus on the wall. What he's doing is constitutionally been upheld over 26 times. Therefore, they can take it to the 9th District Court, sue him, get them to say it's unconstitutional, but it's immediately going to go to the Supreme Court, and we know how they're going to vote, and they're going to stand on the 26 precedents that came before. Otherwise, all state of emergencies would have to be considered to be unconstitutional. So what do you see playing out over the next 60, 90 days?
I think a lot of it goes down to the national narrative, the role of social media, and social media is a big part of our problem. It's interesting that you bring up, you know, this book from this gentleman that we both know, and we all both know, you know, everybody that knows him personally knows him to be somewhat of a embellisher and an exaggerator whose word is not necessarily something that can be taken to the bank, so to speak. But what's that's interesting, since you brought up the book, is that there's a whole section in the book called The Unknown Presidents. And almost every president in American history has had his own eccentricities. You know, Rutherford B. Hayes held nightly gospel sing-alongs that were mandatory. Calvin Coolidge used to ride a mechanical horse in the White House with a raccoon perched over his shoulder. The book gets into some of the really weird things about some of the previous administrations. The problem is, back in the day, number one, the media didn't report on it. Number two, social media didn't embellish upon it. So Trump has to combat that. It depends over the next 60, 90, 120 days, going up to 20, what exactly or how exactly Trump responds, because he sees the very infantile nature of what is going on in the body politic today. It depends on how he plays it and how he exploits it, because he is no more eccentric, no more outlandish than almost every previous president. You have to be a narcissist by definition to even want the office. So the fact of the matter is, he's playing his game. He is acting out in real life his version of a Trump TV show. If he was to create the TV program, Donald Trump president, this is what it looks like. And so we can't be surprised by that. So now the issue becomes how factionalized, because one thing that I do like about Trump, despite the fact all the tweeting, it really gets under my skin sometimes, is that he has got the whole Democrat Party fetching and catching. They don't know who they are, where they're going. They're so off base because he is so unpredictable. So what the next 60, 90, 120 days is going to hold, I think a lot of that's going to come down to exactly how he portrays himself in public and how social media and the millennials and the uninformed voters respond to him.
He's won America because of the Trump rallies.
Mm-hmm.
The bully pulpit, the rallies, he still gets these sellout crowds with tens of thousands of people waiting outside to trying to get in. If he continues doing that for the next 2 years, he doesn't even have to have a campaign.
No, he doesn't. No.
He's already won. He's gotten the masses. He's mobilized the masses. And what was it? Simultaneous to his event, there was another event, 200 people.
Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah. He had an event. 200 people showed up to that event. I pray that the conservative voice prevails in this country. Ruth Bader Ginsburg she's resurfaced, but for how long? All right. I think there'll be one more appointment to the bench during this administration. Over the next 2 years, I think she'll be the one to go. She's been battling this cancer situation, and she's a frail little thing as she is. Then we get into the real meat and potatoes of what happens with things like abortion and these laws in New York as to whether or not they are constitutional or whether or not they violate murder and they violate what we define as life in America. And that's an important definition that we have to come to grips with, is what is the definition of life. It's in the preamble to the Constitution. Okay, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, those being life. What does that mean?
Right.
Okay, does that mean when I take my first breath? Does that mean upon my conception? What does that mean? I think it's a fundamental answer of what life, liberty, my freedom to be able to be outspoken without being assaulted, okay, and my pursuit of happiness. What does that look like as a national and an individual citizen level? And it becomes fundamental constitutionalism that says that we have to go back to what the founding fathers, and hopefully we have a Supreme Court now seated where we have the majority who are constitutionalists, who believe in the Federalist Papers, who believe in what was written by the founding fathers, with the intent for the protection of the individual and to move the responsibility to the states. And then we in the states need to get up and out and motivated back to the polls and mobilize. And that's where the Republican Party has failed historically, is in mobilizing the voters.
No, you're absolutely right. And one thing the Democrats have done with both New York and Virginia, even in their attempt, is they have redefined the word abortion. Because if you're able to take a life at the moment of birth, then that's no longer abortion to me. You are not aborting a pregnancy because you've already gone through your state of pregnancy. Think of it this way for just a moment. We are all, 100% of us, are all victims of pregnancy. You know, we were all obviously born. If you can terminate a life at the moment of birth, then by extension, can you not terminate a life, a pregnancy, because we're all victims of pregnancy after the fact? And some theologians and scholars have even advanced the idea, obviously these are progressive theologians, have advanced the idea that a child should be abortable up to 5 years of age. Now that got shot down some years ago. But the point is, exactly what you're talking to, is the fact that you've got this redefinition of what is, the redefinition of abortion, the redefinition of life. And I've said it before, and you can disagree, you're the theologian here. I believe we're in a holy war. I believe we are in a war for our souls and a war of good and evil right here. And I think that really panics a lot of people.
I completely agree. And that is the battle royale as to whether or not America will fall as a nation, as to whether or not we legislate evil to the point where it is no longer abortion, it is termination of life being legal, and then at what period of time. And on the other side of that will be the termination of life. If you're given 6 months to live, can I then terminate your life early? Do I give you the opportunity to terminate your life? And then we have the same-sex marriage, the Marriage Equality Act. Then we introduced conversation about polygamy, and all of a sudden the morality of America is being legislated by a very corrupt moral base. We're talking with Michael Hart during this hour on the third Monday of every month at 10 a.m. He is the author of Unknown America, Myths and Little Known Oddities about the Greatest Nation on Earth. Go to Amazon.com or visit his website, which is michaelhartshow.com. Michael, always a delight to have you on the program.
My pleasure.
Good to see you. I'll see you right here, same day, same time next month on the 18th.
Look forward to it.
All right, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we will bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.